So the last part of chapter number 4, we are going to discuss about factors that are determining the demand. So in the previous lecture, we have explained how demand for a good changes as a result of changes in price. And the demand schedule and the law of demand states the relationship between price and the demand for that commodity, assuming other things remaining the same. So we have assumed while giving the demand schedule and law of demand that we have assumed that other things that can influence the demand for commodity is the same. So we have assumed that other things which are capable of influencing the demand are kept constant, kept constant. That means they remain the same. So when there is a change in these other things, what will happen? And we have seen that when there is a change in these other things, the whole demand schedule or the demand curve changes. So we have discussed the movement along the demand curve, shift in the demand curve, that is contraction or extension of the demand curve, because the other things which can influence the demand has changed. Because of that, we have witnessed the shift in the demand curve, that is extension or either contraction of the demand curve. So as a result of changes in these other factors, the demand curve will shift above or below. So these are some of the other factors, the factors which determine demand for goods. Number one, what we have is taste and preference of the consumers. So an important factor, which determines demand for a good is the taste and preference of the consumers for that good. So a good for which consumer taste and preference are greater, its demand would be large and its curve will therefore lie at higher level. So if a consumer's taste and preference is greater for a particular commodity, then the demand would be also large for that commodity and the curve will therefore also lie at a higher level. And again, people taste and preference for various goods often change as a result of there is change in the demand for them. So people or consumers taste and preference changes from time to time, and then the demand for that commodity will change. So the change in demand for various goods may occur due to change in fashion. When there is a change in fashion, you shift your preference, your taste, and you are also changing your demand for a commodity. And another thing is due to pressure of advertisements by the manufacturers and sellers for different products. Because of the advertisement, the pressure from the advertisement that you get, you also change your taste and preference, therefore affecting your demand for that good. So on the contrary, when certain goods, on the opposite side, when certain goods goes out of fashion, when it is outdated, people's taste and preference no longer remain favorable to them, so demand for them decreases. On the other side, we have seen the demand for a commodity increases because of the pressure of advertisement, change in fashion. And on the other hand, people demand for commodity also decreases because of outdated fashion maybe, and then they are unfavorable, or certain goods goes out of fashion. That is why their demand also decreases. So taste and preference plays a very important role in determining a demand for a commodity. The second point is income of the people, and we have discussed the income effect. How does income effect determines the demand of a consumer? So here, income effect would mean the demand for goods also depends on the income of the people, as we have discussed. The greater the incomes of the people, the greater will be their demand for goods. So when income falls, they would demand less of the goods. And when their income is high, their purchasing power, their real income increases, and they would like to consume more of that commodity. So their demand would increase for that goods if the income also increases. So when we talk about before that, when the incomes of the people for, it is also important to know that they would demand less of the goods, because with the given income, they could purchase, or they're able to purchase a less amount of good or less amount of commodity. So when income falls, as I have said, their demand would also fall. So when we talk about income of the people, we have to discuss two things, or two different types of goods, that is normal goods and inferior goods. What are normal goods? Normal goods would mean when increase in income, the consumer buys more of a good. That is a normal good. So when a consumer face an increase in income, the consumer will tend to buy more of a good, and that good is a normal good. But in case of inferior goods, with the increase in income, the consumer will buy less of that good. So that is the case of an inferior goods. So we have given in graphical form explaining the demand for normal goods and inferior good. So figure number 7, that is effect of increase in income on demand for a normal goods. So the effect of increasing income for the demand for a normal goods. So on the x-axis we are measuring the quantity demanded for a normal goods, and on the y-axis we are measuring price of that normal goods. So what do we do when there is an increase in income? So when there is an before the increase of income, a consumer's demand curve is given by DD at price P, and he is demanding OQ of a commodity. This is in case of a normal goods, remember. So before the rise in income at P price, a consumer is buying, or the consumer's demand curve is DD curve, and then his quantity amount of demanded is OQ. Once the income increases and with the given price OP same price, the demand curve has shifted to D dash from DD curve. So which means that at the same price, a consumer is able to buy or is demanding more quantity of goods. So before it was only OQ, now it has demanded OQ1 amount of goods. So when there is an increase in income, there will be shift in the demand curve, rightward shift towards right. So rightward shift would mean at the same price, a consumer is able to demand more or much larger quantity than before. So OQ1 is greater than OQ. So in case of a normal goods, a consumer is demanding more quantity of good when income rises. And opposite to this, let us see the effect of increase in income on demand for an inferior goods. So this is case of an inferior goods. Again, on the x-axis we are measuring quantity demanded for an inferior good, and then on the y-axis we are measuring price for that good. So before, with the price OP given, price is given at OP, before the rise of income, the demand curve is DD. So a consumer is demanding OQ quantity of inferior good. So once the rise in income occurs, the demand curve has shifted to D dash from DD. So it has shifted towards the left, which means that earlier at the same price, a consumer is demanding OQ quantity of inferior good. And once the income rises, the quantity demanded reduce to OQ dash dash, which means that in case of an inferior good, the effect of an income or the effect of a rise in income would lead to a decrease in the demand, decrease in the quantity demanded of a good. So in case of a inferior good, the effect of the rise in income would lead to a decrease in the amount of quantity that is demanded. So it has decreased from OQ to OQ dash dash.